Foghat and Asia isn't the most obvious pairing for a co-headlining show, but that's what I got served up on Sunday night at London's legendary Shepherd's Bush Empire. Was it worth my time? Come on in, and I'll tell you all. Hey, I'm JSB, long-time classic rock fan, but not one who was around when most of it was being made. Maybe that's why I'm a bit less bothered about lineups than some people, if you know what I mean. And both of these bands have only limited links, shall we say, to their classic incarnations. Well, actually, even that's complicated. Let's take this one step at a time, and we'll start briefly with Foghat. I really don't know Foghat beyond Slow Ride, though they've long been on my list of bands I feel I should investigate. Well, that and a slightly strange personal encounter I once had with another of their original members, not currently in the band. I'll explain later. So Foghat being on the bill was intriguing enough, and they were fine. Despite being formed in the UK, of course, this small run of dates apparently marks the first time that they've played here in over 50 years. Basically, they moved to America, had some success, and just stayed. And of course, drummer Roger Earl is the only original member, and Brit for that matter, still in the ranks. So their bluesy rock wasn't really distinctive enough to make me rush out and want to devour their back catalogue, but they were entertaining enough and clearly had some dedicated fans in the audience who were more than happy, so fair play to them. They also endured some technical issues, especially around the lead singer's guitar, with real grace and humour, which absolutely endeared them to me. I know from personal experience what it's like to have to plough ahead with a show where things are going hideously wrong at times. And I mean, they did have to stop it because it really needed sorting out, but the whole thing went through with utter class, I would say. So good on them. Musically, for me, the standout was Rodney O'Quinn on bass and occasional lead vocals, who I see has been in the band for about 10 years, which makes him one of the longest standing members who was on the stage last night. Um, and Earl on the drums was actually pretty damn fine too, even if he did look older than his actual 79 years. He told me he was 99 and I'd have believed you. Hmm. So, unfortunately, this was an all seated gig, the bane of my existence, if you recall from my Stephen Wilson review earlier in the year. And yes, I was pretty uncomfortable during their set. You're not really meant to be at a rock gig sitting like this. It's not good. It's not good. Sorry, did I look constipated? Because that wasn't really what I was going for. Anyway, I'd certainly have enjoyed it more if I'd been up and moving as nature intended, but I appreciate I'm in the minority at gigs like this, and most of the audience were likely grateful to be sat on their fat old asses all night long. No offence. Um, yeah, I was also closer to the stage than I'd normally be at that venue, um, where the sound wasn't great, to be honest. The vocals were often quite buried in the mix, especially for Foghat, but what can you do? Anyway, they played for just under 75 minutes, which is what I assumed I'd get from the other co-headliner as well, but no, I was pleasantly surprised there. So Foghat, if we're doing a rating, let's call it a 6 out of 10. It was fine. If you're a fan, you probably enjoyed it more. If not, they weren't unpleasant. I can't say fairer than that. Now, moving on to the actual headliner, and certainly the reason I was there, uh, Asia, but really not Asia. Asia featuring John Payne, which is a very clear distinction. Um, it's complicated, and I won't go through all the ins and outs, but broadly, Payne fronted the official Asia lineup from roughly 1991 to 2005-ish, and made lots of fairly exceptional music in that time that was almost entirely ignored. He was then unceremoniously ousted when the right amount of money and other circumstances came together to reunite the classic lineup in about 2006, which of course continued more or less until John Whitten's sad passing in 2017. Anyway, this era was also my entry point into the band. I actually discovered Asia in 1999 through the Payne Era Anthology CD, which featured tracks from his first three albums and some re-recordings of Whitten era stuff, which I think are fine. Some people think they're terrible, but works for me. Anyway, soon after that, I picked up the debut on vinyl and worked sort of from in both directions, from the outer reaches as they were at the time into the middle, and then new stuff came out, grabbed that, loved it all. So I know very few people have first encountered Asia either A, in their teens in the 90s, or B, through the Payne era. So I've always maintained a love for that period and assumed I'd never see him live. He's, like Foghat, another Londoner who's worked almost exclusively in the States for decades. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the set list pretty much nailed the balance. They opened with Go from Astra, which is one of my favorite Asia albums from any era, and coincidentally was celebrating its 40th anniversary this very month. And then follow that with Only Time Will Tell, of course, one of the classics from the debut, before devoting most of the set to songs from the Payne era. And some of those picks were exactly what I'd have chosen myself, and others weren't. Um, but those, like Don't Call Me and The Longest Night, in case you're wondering, actually made me appreciate them more than I ever had. So I like it when that happens. You have a song announced and think, oh, and then you hear it and think, oh, that's actually better than I remembered. Especially in the case of The Longest Night. But whereas, it's from one of my favorite albums, there was certainly a lot from the album I was hoping to hear, but hey, you can't have it all. Anyway, Payne delivered everything with his usual full integrity and sincerity. So whether he was doing his own material or going back to those early classics, it didn't feel like he was just saying, oh, I guess I have to do this song then, or anything like that. And honestly, this was far more enjoyable for me than the final time I saw the Wetton fronted band, which was oddly enough at the same venue on the Gravitas tour, which had for me an underwhelming set list and going through the motions vibes at times. Yeah, it was a disappointing end to the real Asia for me. Whereas this particular occasion was blooming great. So the rest of the band had no direct connection to any era of Asia, but they were fantastic players, one and all. Doug Rappaport on guitar, I believe is his name. It's meant to be Francis Dunnery, who was announced as the new guitarist and managed to play one show before deciding maybe this isn't the gig for me. But we had Aaron Olson on drums, who plays with Infinity Rush. So you got a drummer from a Rush tribute band, you're pretty much guaranteed he's going to be great, and he was. And of course, Rio Okamoto of Spock's Beard on the keys. The only one of those three that I'd seen before with Spock's Beard. Fair amount of time ago now. It's been a while since I've followed the beard. Anyway, as for John himself, he utterly slayed it on bass and vocals. I mean, his bass absolutely slaps. I don't know that I'd really appreciated that as much as I did on the night. So they played for about an hour and 45 minutes and even went 15 minutes over what I assume was the 11 p.m. curfew. And even then, I see that there was a song on the set list that got dropped, Desire. We did, though, get a tribute to Jeff Beck with John on guitar, which was incredible. Maybe I would have preferred another Asia tune, but that was fine. And sprinkled into the John Payne era stuff, we did get Soul Survivor from the debut, and then ended up with another 1-2 punch to end the night from the album Wildest Dreams, and the obligatory Heat of the Moment. Again, a song I actually not a massive fan of, surprisingly. I mean, I don't dislike it, but it's only my 8th favourite from the debut. 9th, if you include the B-side, Ride Easy. Anyway, again, I enjoyed that pretty much as I ever have, so nice one. So yeah, finishing quite late. I hadn't really noticed that the time was going, and I was feeling quite comfortable, even though I was sat because I was riveted. So that's always the difference for me. If I'm totally engrossed in the music, then the pain in my backside mysteriously goes away until we got to Heat of the Moment and we stood up like, yeah. Anyway, don't look constipated again because I'm really not. Just to be clear. Anyway, my Foghat anecdote. I know you've been waiting for this. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was doing an extras job on a Sainsbury's Christmas advert, and one of the other extras was Tony Stevens, the original bass player from Foghat. And boy, was he surprised to find somebody of my youthful and good looks who had even heard of them. Certainly nobody else had of any age. So that says it all, really. Anyway, this was a highly enjoyable night for me, and probably not one we're ever going to get a chance to repeat. I can't imagine that either band is going to be rushing back over any sooner than they had in the past. And if you wait another 50 years for Foghat, then yeah, the maths doesn't really work, does it? Anyway, as I said, it was a 6 out of 10 for Foghat for me. Asia, featuring John Payne, a very, very solid 9 out of 10. Great stuff. So glad that I finally got to see him. And hopefully this promised new album comes out at some point. Of course, we haven't just got a promised new album from his version of Asia. Jeff Downes has got another version of Asia put together now, and they're working on an album as well that's just supposedly set for release next year. We shall see. Which will be the better? Only time will tell. You see what I did there? Yeah. Anyway, so that's my take on the Nights. But if for any reason you've never heard any John Payne era Asia, well, you could do worse than check out 4 random songs I covered last year for the 30th anniversary of the Aria album. And you can do that one side of my head. Otherwise, it's just thanks for watching and bye for now, but not for long.
It's the end, but the moment has been prepared for.